Hey, Shalom. I used to attend a church a long time ago, and we had this sign on the back of the big sign on the back of the church, inside the church, on the back wall, that said, "Lord, teach me to die." Right? And people would visit the church, and they'd be like, "Man, this is a cult. They talking about teaching me how to die." They wanted to learn how to die. Like, what kind of cult is this? But of course, what it was referring to was in how the scriptures talks about us dying to ourselves, right? That's what the scriptures, it talks about us dying to ourselves, dying to the flesh, so that our spirit can live, right? So we come into this new life, right? So we are identified with the Messiah in his death, right? So that we can be identified with him in the resurrection of life. So we put this old life to death so that the new life can rise up. The seed goes into the ground and it dies, right? Why? So that the life that's in the seed can be sprouted up, so that that life can come up out of that seed and live, right? So death has to come so that life can come, right? So that was that's the premise. Teach me, Father, teach me to die. Teach me to die to myself, to die to my flesh, to die to this old life, right? So that I can be renewed and resurrected into the into your life, into your spirit. Let this strengthen the spirit, so that the flesh will be weakened and die. Somebody that's, once we're dead to things, we're no longer responsive to it. Once I'm dead to my old way of reacting, my old way of thinking, my old way of acting, my old way of being, then I'm not going to respond in that same vein anymore, right? So that is what this walk is about. It's about learning to die, learning to live. It says I offer my body as a living sacrifice, because I'm alive, but I'm considered dead according to my flesh, but my spirit lives. So I submit my body, I lay it down, I lay my life down, so that your spirit can live through me, so that your ways are your life is coming through me. The reason that the Messiah, Yahusha, the reason that his death, that he was able to be resurrected, and death had no constraint to hold him, was because of the life that he lived. Because his life was without spot or blemish. His life was in without sin, untainted, right? Because of that, law of sin and death had no hold over him, right? So the law of sin and death is that the soul that dies, the soul that sins will die. The man that sins will die, right? So we die because of the original sin of Adam and Hawa. Because they sinned, they introduced death into this realm, right? So that all man will die, right? But the man who dies and is the first man who died and was sinless was Yahusha. And in him, when we die in him, we're able to be resurrected. He was able to be resurrected because death could not hold him. It couldn't hold him. It didn't have no legal authority, because the authority of death is that the one who sins will die. He did not sin. So though he went through the process of death, it could not hold him. He resurrected. He went through the process of death to solidify the covenant, to seal the covenant, right? To cover us, right? Because we all have sinned, and now in the resurrection, he was resurrected because it could not hold him, and now us being in him, we are able to be resurrected to new life. We're covered. We fellowship with him in that suffering. We identify with him in that death. We're immersed into that death, and then into the resurrection of life, right? So we are called to identify with that death. So we lay down our life and we live as he lived, in obedience and submission to the Most High Yah, to his word, in his spirit. Lauryn Hill has a song with one of the lines is that, what song was that? She's like, basically, you say that you'll die for me. Die for me, die for me. You said you'll die for me. And a lot of people will say that, they'll say, I'll die for you. I'll take a bullet for you. But she says in the next line, live for me, live for me. Why won't you live for me? You said you die for me. You said you take a bullet for me. You would jump in front of a car for me to save my life. You would die for me. But why won't you live for me? Live for me. That's great that you would die for me, but it's hard to believe that a person, you would die for me, give your life for me, literally die, but you won't live for me. You won't live dying to yourself, is basically what that's saying. You won't live a life of dying to your fleshly desires, dying to your fleshly inclinations, dying to selfishness, dying to pride, right? Dying to the things that kill a relationship, dying to those things that hinder, the person next to you. We won't, if you won't live a life of dying to yourself, then what's the point of being willing to die, to kill your flesh? It's easy to let the flesh die, even though that's a permanent thing. It takes nothing of our own effort to die for somebody. That's actually pretty easy to die for somebody. But to live for somebody, that's a life full of dying. That's a life full of killing the flesh, dying to yourself, biting your tongue, choosing to say something that's life-giving instead of that's bringing death. Choosing to not be offended and to forgive. This is a life full of dying to the inclinations of the flesh that are not like Yah. Dying to the things in our flesh that we have this inclination towards doing and thinking and reacting. Causing that to lay down on the altar and instead picking up our stake, picking up the instrument of death, and allowing ourselves to go through the process of dying and allowing ourselves to go through the process of life coming forth instead. Dying to unforgiveness, bitterness, anger, and living to forgiveness, long suffering, compassion. So this is the walk that we are signing up for. This is the journey that we are engaging in, the fellowship with him in the suffering of the flesh, the not speaking when people are saying this and saying that, but you choose to refrain until the right time, until an opportune time for the Most High to be glorified through you is when you choose to speak. So the life that the Mashiach demonstrated to us is as important as the death was, in as important as the resurrection. Right, all of these things, we can't focus more on one part than the other. His life was important, the life that he lived and dying to himself, and then is what made the dying mean anything. Right, so so we fellowship with him in living the life of dying to self, and fellowship in the fact that we are immersed in that death, and then we are resurrecting new life by allowing the spirit to thrive and to live, and us reflecting that new life. So, yeah, we had a sign in the back that said, Lord, teach me to die. Teach me how to die. Because we have to learn. It's a process of learning and choosing to allow our flesh to die. To not feed our flesh, to feed the spirit. It's a daily decision. It's a daily decision, and it's a daily, it has to be daily revisited and renewed. So Yah, teach me to die. We look to the Messiah. We study his life, study his teachings, and and understand what this new life is that we've been given. Right, this new life that we've been given in him. To be able to reflect that in our walk on the earth. So, will we live for him? Many say they'll die for him. Many, have died. Many will die standing. It's much easier to die, in my opinion. It's much easier to die than it is to live dying. It's much easier to take a bullet because you're gone. No more responsibility than it is to live every day dying, rendering yourself, your fleshly desires, your fleshly inclinations, rendering those things dead is a lot harder. And it's a daily decision that we have to maintain, because that old life is waiting to resurrect. You throw enough water on that thing, just like if you plant something, boy, if you plant something, it'll look like it's dead. It may look like it's dead, but that thing is looking for an opportunity. Drop a little bit of water on it, that thing will start growing again. You try to cut up weeds and you think that thing is gone. You cut it up, dry it up. All it needs is a little bit of life, and that thing start growing again. And that's how the flesh is. Like, the flesh is just feed it a little bit. You'll see how not dead it is. Start feeding it. Start watering it. And that thing will start to strengthen up on you and increase and resurrect back to life. So your flesh is waiting for an opportunity to resurrect. So you don't feed the flesh, you feed the spirit. Right? Feed the spirit so that you can have life. You feed the flesh, it's going to lead you to death. So Yah, teach us to die to ourselves and to live to you, to live, to allow your word to flourish in us, so that we're walking in that word, walking in that way, and rewiring, becoming rewired to the things of the spirit, so that the flesh becomes weak. And the spirit becomes strong, so that it's not so much of a battle to live. Because it's not before I really committed myself to this walk in the Most High, I thought that it was, I just thought that it would be so impossible, right? I just thought that, the different desires and things that I had was dealing with, that it would just be a day-to-day battle every day of my life. And I just was like, I don't think I could live life like that. But that's not the case. When he gives you his spirit, you have the capacity to overcome the flesh. And as you make different choices, you become rewired. That's a physical reality. That's a physical reality, as far as even your neurons being rewired. Like, it's literally your brain, your neurological pathways start to become rewired when you make different choices, when you change your patterns. Because the things that we think that we do, it becomes a pattern of thinking, a pattern of being, a pattern of desiring. We are just on an automatic pathway, based on the life choices that we have engaged in. And we start making different choices. Over time, you become rewired. You become, those things literally rewire, and you become a new person over time. You have new neurological pathways, and you're becoming renewed in the thinking of your mind, and renewed in your activities, and you're becoming a new person. So it's a physical reality as much as it is a spiritual reality. So you're choosing the things that are in alignment with his spirit and his word and his way, and it's going to rewire you. It's going to change you. It's going to renew you. So these are things that are spiritual and natural. It works together hand in hand. So we just gotta trust them and walk the walk. Keep watering the spirit. So And that's that. So, blessings and shalom.